So in 2019, about 5 years ago, I competed in my first powerlifting competition. And since then, I've competed about another 10 or so times over the past 3 to 4 years. And I remember at my first comp that I ever did, that was held at Black Flag Barbell, shout out Black Flag, that no longer exists. I didn't have an idea of honestly what was going to happen to begin with, like how the order of powerlifting went. I'd watched some really quick videos on like the commands for powerlifting, and that was all I really knew. I knew that I had to squat, bench, and deadlift. I knew I had 3 attempts to do so, but other than that, I didn't know really how it would run. The other thing that I had no clue about was what to bring to my first powerlifting competition. And so that's something that I want to go over today. I want you to have the experience of being well prepared and being well knowledgeable or highly knowledgeable about how you should refuel and rehydrate for a powerlifting comp, so you don't make the same mistake that I did when I went into my first powerlifting competition, where I was underfueled, underhydrated, or dehydrated, sorry. And to be honest, I had gone into my future comps after my first comp dehydrated and underfueled for some of them, because I just didn't know what was the right thing to bring to a powerlifting competition. Now, when it comes to powerlifting, what happens is there's a 2-hour weigh-in. So say, for example, your lift-off time is at 9 a.m. That means your weigh-in time will be at 7 a.m. So this provides you with 2 hours to basically refuel, or if you'll count for warming up for your first attempt if you're in the first flight, about an hour and a half to refuel and rehydrate for your competition day. The other thing that you also have is a 10-minute break between lifts. Now, obviously, if there are 2 flights and you're in the first flight, for example, you're in flight A, then what would happen in terms of the order of the competition is all the lifters in flight A will do their attempts first. So starting off with squats, will do all their squat attempts first. And then all of flight B will lift. That means you would have the duration of when the flight B is commencing or going, plus the 10-minute break you have between the squat and bench, or the bench and the deadlift, to basically continue to refuel or continue to like maintain your energy levels by eating up before you go into your next lift. So there is definitely time for you to eat, to drink, to make sure that you're going into your lifts, giving yourself the best possible opportunity to perform at your greatest ability. If we do break it down and make it, I guess, easier and more digestible in terms of things to bring to competition, there are 3 categories of things that you need to remember when you are preparing for your powerlifting competition. Number 1 is your gear or your clothing, right? When it comes to powerlifting, obviously, if you are using equipment to lift with, your belt, knee sleeve, wrist wraps, those things, you need to make sure you bring it to your comp with you. Okay, I've seen many times when lifters have rocked up to their comp and they've left their knee sleeves at home, or they've left their wrist wraps at home. Okay, so make sure, I always do this either the night before or even 2 days before my comp. I pack my bag that I'm going to bring to my comp with all the equipment that I'm going to bring, starting from head to toe. So your belt, my wrist wraps, knee sleeves, deadlift socks, normal socks, all the shoes that I'm going to wear. Right? Write down a list of all the things that you use in training and make sure that is in your gym bag when you bring it to comp. Okay? So that's the first thing that you want to do. Now, additional to this is if you are competing in a sanctioned competition. So if you're competing in a sanctioned competition, it's sanctioned by a federation, and that federation has rules. The federation has regulations on what equipment can be used, whether it be regulations on like the thickness of the belt, for example, or what brands of knee sleeves or wrist wraps are permitted in competition. So make sure if you are competing in a sanctioned competition, you go through the rule book of whatever federation that you're competing in and make sure that your equipment qualifies and is allowed to be used in competition. Okay, that's sort of like on top of what you need to make sure you bring for equipment. Now, when it comes to clothing, you want to make sure that if you are competing in a novice comp and you don't need to wear a soft suit, make sure you wear something that is comfortable for you to lift in. I've seen sometimes people might wear like oversized shirts, for example, or they might wear something to try and look good on the platform. but isn't really functional or doesn't really help them with their lifting. It might be like a slippery shirt, for example, like a tight, slippery shirt, which is made of like nylon or polyester or something, which can cause the bar to be slippery on your back when you squat, or can cause you to slide very easily on the bench press. Okay, I highly recommend for shirts, just wear a cotton shirt if you're not wearing a soft suit. If you are competing in a sanctioned competition, it's most likely that in the rulebook it's going to specify that the shirt has to be 100% cotton. So make sure, same thing as your equipment, that you go through the rulebook and make sure you have an understanding of what clothing is going to be permitted when you do compete. Now, if you are competing in a sanctioned competition, then soft suits are mandatory. So make sure you have got a soft suit with you when you compete on that day. Now, a really good tip that I like to tell my clients and my athletes is to lay out all the clothes that you're going to wear on comp day and make sure it's packed in a separate bag, separate to your food, separate to your gym clothes. Make sure it's packed on the day. Now, some people, they might want to like just wear casual clothes for their weigh-ins, and then after the weigh-in, they get changed into their soft suit. Personally, for me, I've never done that. What I've done is at the morning of the comp, I would put my soft suit on and just wear them as shorts, and then I'll slip on the shirt that I would wear for when I compete. So that way, when I do go weigh in, all I need to do is just take those items of clothing off, weigh myself in, put them back on, and I'm literally ready to start warming up from there. Obviously, I'm not gonna start warming up like at that time, but I'm ready to go without having to like go to the toilet, potentially wait in a queue and wait for someone, wait for people to finish up, wait for them to finish getting changed, or just wait for the toilet in general so that I can get changed. I'm already ready. I've got my soft suit in, I've got my shirt on. All I need to do from there is just pop my soft suit, like pull the sleeves up of my soft suit, and I'm ready to go. Okay, so I highly recommend that if you are competing and you're wearing a soft suit. In terms of the equipment and clothing, honestly, the best tip that I can give you is just be organized and be prepared. Have all of your items of equipment and clothing prepared in a bag. Make sure that you bring it, make sure you know where it's going to be. Don't just leave it around at the venue or whatever gym you're competing at. Don't just like leave it around or give it to someone to look after, because you never know where that might be. And it can be disastrous if, for example, you're ready for bench press, but you don't know where your wrist reps are. Or you're ready for deadlifts, but you don't know where your belt is. Okay, always keep your stuff organized and always have a specific place to put everything. So that way you know exactly where everything is. Now, moving on to the second thing that I think you should prepare for when it comes to a powerlifting competition is your hydration. Okay. Now, when it comes to powerlifting competitions, especially during the summer and in a gym that can be like a dungeon, make sure that you are hydrating properly. Now, a tip that I always give my athletes is bring 2 bottles. One bottle with just normal water, and then another bottle is a bottle where you'll put in your pre-workout, your hydrolyte, your electrolytes. So that way you've got 2 bottles at the same time. So that way, you know, you're not restricted to just like having to drink all of this water to then put in hydrolyte, or drink all of this hydrolyte to then put in some Powerade. Okay, always have one bottle with just normal water, and then another bottle with whatever mixture you're putting into it. Okay. When it comes to preparing your hydration keys, obviously bring your pre-workout if you use pre-workout. If not, for me personally, I don't use any pre-workout when I train or compete. But what I do like is an energy drink. So I usually just bring 1 or 2 energy drinks. Obviously, I'm not going to drink both if I'm not feeling like I'm going to crash, or I'm not feeling like too low on energy. So I might just give the second energy drink after I compete to like a friend or my coach or something. But always have your pre-workout or your stimulants or whatever ready to go. In terms of hydration, make sure that you bring hydrolyte, or what I also prefer is Powerade in powder form. So hydrolyte is really useful, and Powerade also very useful because they have electrolytes. It'll help you retain water as you consume it, which you would definitely want, especially if you like sweat a lot and it's going to be really hot on that day. Okay, so make sure you have Powerade in powder form and hydrolyte tablets ready to go, ready to put into your separate bottle, so that way you can always have a bottle of just normal water to drink, and then you can always have a bottle of hydrolyte or Powerade ready for you to go to sip on in between your attempts or in between your warm-ups. So that's the hydration keys that you want to remember to do when you are competing. Now, the third thing to remember to prepare for if you're competing in a powerlifting competition is your food. There have been many, many times when I've helped someone out at the comp and I've asked them, oh, what food do you have? And they're like, oh, I didn't bring any food. That has happened many, many times. It happens at every single comp that I go to, that I coach at, where I see someone, without food. It's very, very important that you have food with you on the day, because otherwise, how are you going to get the energy to lift and to potentially hit your max or go beyond your max, right? You need to make sure that you're feeling properly for your competition. And so when you do prepare for your comp, make sure that you've got a meal to eat after you weigh in. So like a breakfast kind of style of meal if you're going to compete in the morning. I really enjoy having pikelets, pancakes, things that are really easy for me to just eat and consume. I honestly like Fruit Loops a lot as well, but I don't eat it with milk. I literally just pour Fruit Loops into my hand and just munch on the Fruit Loops. Those are all great sources of carbs, glycogen, and energy that will help get my body going, especially when it's early in the morning. So pikelets, pancakes, Fruit Loops. I know some people do prefer bagels. Personally, for me, I've tried bagels before in competitions, and I feel like they're a bit too thick and too difficult to sort of eat and consume. But if there is a toaster or something, and that can make it easier to eat. But yeah, I do prefer to have something that's a bit softer, that's easier to eat. Definitely bring in some honey or jam as well that you can put on your pikelets or your Fruit Loops or whatever. Or you could even just get steamed rice and just get some soy sauce over it. That's definitely really good sources of carbs and sodium that you can easily consume after you weigh in. When it comes to your weigh-in, you want to make sure that you're optimizing and making sure that you're eating and refueling as optimally and as quickly as possible. Not too quick to the point where your body isn't able to consume that amount of food and water that you're giving it, but you don't want to be wasting time, right? You don't want to be walking around, talking to people, asking them how their training was, asking how they feel about comp. If you're going to be lifting and you're going to have to squat a really heavy load very soon, you need to make sure that you're consuming your food and you're hydrating as best as you can to give yourself the best opportunity to lift. Okay, so don't waste time during your weigh-ins by doing other random shit. Make sure you're focusing on refueling properly. This is another reason why I come to my comps dressed in my soft suit and my t-shirt. So that way I don't need to wait for the toilet to get changed. I don't need to bother with that. I don't have to get clothes out of my bag. I don't have to worry about any of that at all. I'm already dressed, and all I need to focus on after I weigh in is just eat and refuel, rehydrate. Okay? Now, the other thing with food is, obviously, there's that sort of meal after your weigh-ins. I also recommend having a meal after squats. With this meal, basically, it'll give yourself some time to digest that food, so that way it sort of kicks in by the time deadlifts come around. Okay. Now, I know that some people don't like consuming too much food before they bench. It could make them feel a bit bloated, which is totally fine. But definitely have something small to eat. Could be those pikelets or pancakes again, or for me personally, I'm quite a big eater, so I usually bring a microwave meal or two with rice or any sort of heavy carb source, and I would heat that up and just quickly eat that. Maybe have a few bites and pieces of my pikelets, and then I would sort of continue from there. After bench, that's when I would have a second dose of pre-workout if I'm feeling like my energy is slumping slightly. So that's when that second can of energy drink or just another scoop of pre-workout would come in really handy. In terms of other foods like snacks and stuff, they can be useful, like just having lollies ready for you, some chips just to snack on, that's easy to consume. But personally, I would much prefer to be eating like a pikelet, something that's a bit more denser, but not too dense, rather than just like chips. Because I feel like with chips, you can't really get a good amount of carbs, a good amount of nutrition without eating a lot of it. And with chips, you only eat a small piece at a time, right? So by having a pikelet, it sort of forces you to have something that's a bit bigger, but is still easy to consume. So that's why pikelets is always my go-to snack when I do compete. So in terms of other items of food or water, you might want to consider bringing pickle juice, especially if you feel like you're prone to cramping or it's going to be a very hot day and you feel like you're not going to be able to consume or retain water as best as possible. Pickle juice is really good because it has a really high amount of sodium and it helps you retain that sort of water when you do consume that. Also, it does come in liquid form, so you are sort of like killing two birds with one stone. The other things that you could consider bringing are things like your own chalk, if you feel like, if you prefer just using your own chalk, or you're worried that the chalk there isn't going to be adequate for you at the venue or the gym. Usually they would provide chalk, they definitely will provide chalk, but you can bring your own chalk, especially if it's liquid chalk. Bring that. The other thing that you want to bring is baby powder. You might be able to find someone who's able to lend you the baby powder for you to use, but it's always better just to have your own because you know that it's there, you know that you've got it. And that way, when it does come around to deadlifts, like you know exactly where that baby powder is and you can just apply it whenever you want to apply it. The last thing that I would consider bringing is some sort of like heat cream or heat rub, pain away, things like that, especially if you're prone to sort of like a few niggles and stuff. It can come in really, really handy. If, for example, your pec is just a bit sore from benching and you're going into deadlifts, or for example, like your legs or quads are feeling like they're a bit crampy, putting some heat cream on it is actually a very, very useful solution, a very useful tool to stop or prevent cramping from occurring. The reason for this is because the heat cream basically encourages heat and blood to enter or to enter that sort of area that you've applied that cream on. And so because of that, nutrients from that blood is pushed into that area and can help with the function of that muscle in that specific area that you've treated. Okay, so definitely bring some sort of heat cream or pain away. Even if you don't use it yourself, there might be someone else who might want to use it, and you can be that person who helps someone out at their comp and help them succeed as well. The last thing that I would consider are any sort of painkillers, ibuprofen. If you do feel like your joints are a bit sore, or you feel like you don't handle the heat very well and you tend to get like headaches from the heat, bring some like Panadol, Panamax, ibuprofen can be useful because they can be very quick, or Nurofen, for example, can be very quick, fast acting, and it can just give you that relief that you need when you are competing. Okay, so hopefully you got some value from that. To break it back down and to simplify things, just make sure you bring all your gear that you usually train with. Make sure you bring your clothes. You're welcome to bring a spare change of shirt, for example, if you get really sweaty. Make sure you bring enough water to keep yourself hydrated, and bring those supplements like Hydrolyte, Powerade. And then with food, don't forget to bring foods that are easy to consume, that you'll enjoy eating so you can consume it quickly, to make sure that you've got enough energy going into your competition. If you want a written breakdown of this, I'm going to put a link into the description box below, or in the episode notes if you're listening to this on Spotify, with a little post infographic that I've made on Instagram, which is a checklist that you can just flick through whenever it does come time for you to compete. If you do have a look at that post, make sure you save it so that you remember to look back at it for your next competition. If this video did bring you any value, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And please leave a review on Spotify if you are listening on there. That really helps this video grow, really helps my channel grow, and I'd love to continue helping and assisting with anyone who's planning to compete anytime soon. See you guys in the next one. Thank you.